I wish I had that sister like I could go shopping
Yeah.
with. We could like cook with or just call each other on the phone and talk hours, talk like
Yeah.
mess or Hi everyone, welcome back to AdoptedGals podcast. We're back again for another video, and today we're going to talk about sibling rivalry within the adoptive family, and just the whole dynamics of like relationships with your siblings. And it's very complicated relationships a lot of the time. Me and Famata, we still talk about it to this day about like how our upbringing like affected our relationships with our both our biological siblings and then also our adopted siblings. But today we're going to focus more on like relationship with siblings that they're biological of our adoptive parents or adoptive family.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when it comes to sibling rivalry, we're not saying all siblings, when it comes to adoption, transgender adoption, that's going to happen. We're
Mhm.
talking about our experiences, and if those who understand, they can relate to this. A lot of the times when a family decides to adopt and they have their own kids and they bring in a new set of group of siblings, and all of a sudden the dynamic has changed. So we're just talking about the dynamic that occurs between the new adopted children and the biological children, and it can be a tough environment because one, the siblings that have been in the home for a while, they have to learn how to figure out how to accept these new siblings. And sometimes with that there comes a time where it feels like the children are not going to get the same attention that they've had before these new children came in. So there's going to be times where the biological children are going to do certain things to make sure that they're on top. And that's where the sibling rivalry comes in, where they will demonize the adopted children and say things about them to the parents to make sure that they are on top. And that's some of the things that I had experienced with my siblings as well. And also outside of the rivalry, there's just sometimes where the siblings may not get along because you're bringing these kids into your house and they have to figure out how to get along. It's like, well, what if we don't connect in that way? What if we don't have, a relationship in that way? What if we don't, like how for you, for example, like you didn't necessarily always have a relationship with your siblings, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's not even just like competition or rivalry. It's just plain and simple. You don't really connect with each other. My siblings, like, I have two sisters who are biological to my adoptive parents. And so when I came to America, I was young. I was 8 years old. But by the time I came here to the United States, they were already going to college. So I didn't really have, a relationship with them too much. Like we were probably in the house together for like 1 year or something like that. They were in a completely different stage and phase in their lives. So there was nothing for us to connect to. So to this day, like, we'll see each other during like family get-togethers and gatherings, but we never had that opportunity to really build a relationship and bond with each other. And I always think like, even if we did, right, even if they were younger, like, would we have connected with each other? Because their interests, first of all, are just so different than my interests, right? So naturally, just as like from human to human, from person to person, we just are so different, right? But then on top of that, you add the fact that I come from a different bloodline. I have different past and traumas and history that they don't understand, that they could never, ever understand, right? So yeah, so it's not always because, like one kid is competing or jealous or whatever. Now, I have always wondered, like with my siblings, like my sisters, we never talked about our adoption process at all, like the adoption at all, like whatsoever.
Oh,
Um, yeah, we've never sat down. They've never asked me questions about it. I've never asked them questions about it. Um, you know what I mean? It's almost like we're like kind of strangers to each other. You know what I mean? But we get together for family and gatherings and whatnot. But I don't really know them. They don't really know me. We don't really understand each other, and not necessarily in a bad way. They're not bad people. We just never got that chance and opportunity to really connect. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, so I always wondered, like, how was that for you? Like, were you jealous? Like, did you feel a type of way? Because now, especially for my middle sister, right? Because I came in, then I became the baby, and I was getting a lot of attention. I think that probably, affected her when she was younger because she was used to getting more attention. But yeah, I never really like ask them, and so maybe I should take that upon myself to
Yeah, yeah, definitely ask them.
get a little more curious.
Yeah, I kind of had that with my sister because her and I we never got along, and
Mhm,
there was times where she did take the route of making sure like she was the good, because her
mhm,
and I are
yeah,
close in age, we're like 6 months apart, 3 months apart.
mhm,
So she took that route of I gotta be the better, girl in this situation. So she was competitive with certain things. So I remember just like, as adults, and I thinking back and reflecting, and I'm like, I understand why she was doing the certain things she was doing because you were the only girl for the longest and you were daddy's girl, you were loved, and all of a sudden you have this new girl in the house and you got to figure out how to stay on top.
mhm,
And I remember asking her, and I'm like, I can understand why you acted the way you acted because that must have been so hard for you because I was getting a lot of attention, even though the attention wasn't necessarily our
right,
parents were doing it on purpose. I
yeah,
just needed more help. And also, I was like this new shiny object. And
mhm,
you probably felt like you were in the background. So you had to figure out how to still, stay irrelevant. So I talked to her about that. I remember her just like crying. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you finally like said that. Like I went through a lot. And I'm like, I did
oh,
not know, like it was a good like healing conversation that we had with each other. And I'm glad that I was able to ask her that and talk to her about it because at the end of the day, yes, it becomes a lot about the adopted children, but I feel like also the biological children get neglected in that area. But even though like the parents, it's not purposeful.
not
I,
purpose, yeah,
yeah, yeah, and I feel like the best way to create like relationships and understanding with siblings, new and old, is to give that space and not necessarily force the kids to be like, well, we got to be so close because we're siblings. No. And
mm,
also talk about like the adoption process that you like you said you never talked about with your siblings. Like have
yeah,
time, sit and talk to your children, like talk about the process together. I feel like that's going to help foster a better relationship where simply the rivalry does not occur because they are understanding of each other and where they're coming from. So at the end of the day, it's just about conversation, but it's really is very interesting because and my younger brother, he's biological. Him and I never had a relationship really. We were just living in the same house, like coexisting. And there
wait,
was
can you
time.
clarify I'm sorry, can you clarify for people, he's biological to, like, he's your biological brother, or he's
He's a biological to my parents. I'm sorry. Yeah, I
okay,
should. He's
okay,
biological to my parents, and he was the
okay,
youngest when we came into the house. And I was like 9, he was like 4, and he
okay,
also was kind of like trying to figure out where he fit in at such a young age. And there was definitely times where I was jealous of him for sure. There's times I was jealous of my biological siblings because I felt like, why do you get to have your birth parents and I don't?
mhm,
And I felt like that was unfair. And of course, it wasn't their fault. And there's times I feel like they got different treatments. And the treatments that he probably got that came out of jealousy is because it's a biological connection that nobody can fix. I can't fix it. My parents can fix it. Stuff just
yeah.
happens.
It
But
just
both,
is naturally like that, yeah, and
yeah,
I honestly, I feel that way too. I think I feel that way more as an adult because when I was younger,
mhm,
they were out college,
yeah,
I was going to boarding schools, I wasn't even really home, like, with my family like that, right?
yeah,
Which is a whole 'nother topic I wanna talk about later, but, like, with siblings, like, I think when I got older, that's when I started to really become more aware of the dynamics between, me being adopted and my sisters, and, they're lovely people individually, right, is who they are, but there
mhm,
are times where, like, I do observe, like, how they engage, like, I just feel like the ability for them to connect
mhm,
more with my parents, it just
mhm.
with ease, it's natural for them.
Right, right.
And you know what I mean? And so I did get jealous of that for sure because they would just be able to spend hours together and just like
Mhm.
talking and engaging and connecting. And I
Yeah.
just have that feeling, you know what I mean, with my family. Like I still feel like in a way it's almost like, okay, if I'm coming to visit you, it's gonna be a couple hours, we're catching up, and then I'm gonna
Mhm,
go on with my own life. You know what I mean? I don't have that connective
mhm,
to this day. It's still something I struggle with, and observe that, especially
mhm,
actually my middle sister. Like I
mhm,
would say she's like more. If we had to say favorite child, whatever, I would
mhm,
kind of say that in a way.
mhm,
Um, and especially her being like the baby initially, and
mhm,
I would just observe how everyone is very fond of her. Everyone connects with her, and even my older sister too. And
mhm.
I would say, yeah, like even though I never had any rivalry with them, there was some jealousy of like, damn,
Yeah.
like I wish I had that kind of connection. I wish like it felt really good to like, it just felt natural to go and like lay on my mom's lap or hug my
Yeah.
dad in a certain kind of way. You know what I mean? Like,
Never
and
felt. Yeah.
it doesn't, I've never, to this day, it doesn't
Hmm.
even, I mean, to be honest with you, like I'm at my family's house right now and like
Hmm.
those feelings are coming back up naturally where it's like
Hmm.
the hurt and the feeling of like, damn, like I'll
Hmm.
never have that feeling. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's painful to think that that's your reality. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
what is it going to take for me to get to that point where I can connect with people and
Yeah.
connect with my family? Like, do I have to have a damn baby? Like, I'm like, now I
Yeah.
understand why people who are like sad and depressed about life feel like the solution is having a baby. Like,
Yeah, and I feel like those emotions will come, easier if you were like a baby when you were adopted. If you were like 4 or 5,
right.
that could
Yeah.
we were adopted at an older age, and of
Yeah.
course, what you're saying, I completely can relate. Like there was
Hmm.
times my parents' biological children are easier to hug them, to sit on their lap, and I
Yeah.
just felt I never felt comfortable doing that. It's not because they didn't make it like
Never felt
I was.
comfortable. Oh
Yeah,
my God. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And it's not even like you said, it's not even like our
no,
parents were lovely in that way. And if we did
yeah,
go
yeah.
over to sit in our laps, like they would allow it. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking for myself, like if I was babysitting a child who was not mine and they wanted to sit on
Mhm.
my lap, I would be like all sweet and loving to them. So
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the pain. I guess it's more on us because, I was actually just thinking about this earlier and I was like, when you're young, you have that maternal connection. You get to
Mhm.
learn what love is and what it feels like to connect and what's enough to, I guess like it's like, get an understanding of what it truly means to connect with people. And when you don't
Mhm.
have that as a child, you're trying to learn that as an adult. And you're
Yeah.
like, when is it enough? When is it like feel good? Or is this
Yeah.
bad? You know what I mean? It's like you question all of it. And especially with like going
Mhm.
back again to the parents and then like the siblings even, right? You're like, do I connect with these people? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally like I'm bringing up my younger brother a lot, the biological one,
Mhm.
because it was kind of like that. Him and I, like being older now, we don't. I mean, I don't talk to my family anymore, of course. Even before that, like we have nothing in common. We don't talk at all. Like we had like no relationship. And sometimes I found that my family used to get mad that we didn't have a relationship and like with between the two siblings. And it's like sometimes you just can't force it.
You
Like if
can't.
it happens, it happens. If it
You
doesn't,
can
it doesn't.
you can
Yeah.
never force it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah, and I think it would be better once again if you talk in the beginning, like make sure everybody's on board the adoption process, like you explaining as it goes on to your biological children, hey, this is going to happen. The person that we're adopting, they've been through certain things like this. So when they come into the house, know that even though we are giving them attention, they need this attention because they've been through a lot. But don't forget that we love you, and we care about you. And yeah.
yeah. And also I want to add on that too, like it's cool. Like I understand some family members they operate by like telling
Mhm,
one child individually, pulling them to the side and telling them one story, then pulling
mhm,
another child and but part of the bonding experience and connecting with
mhm,
everyone is like kind of bringing it all out on the table where everyone
mhm.
is involved. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like having that conversation with the child, with everyone present. You know what I mean? Where it's not like a secretive or
Right.
weird topic where you have to be all walking on
Yeah.
eggshells around. And it's not like that. You want to be open and upfront about it so everyone understands and they're on the same page. And I think like conversations like relationships are built through understanding,
Yeah.
or that's one aspect at least, and understanding comes from conversation, obviously empathy, being
Mhm,
able to see, see the other person's perspective. And how can they do that if
mhm.
everything's all hush hush and like
Yeah.
shoved under the rug and it's like, you know what I mean? And then as an adult you're like, wait, why were you adopted again? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right. Like
It's
right.
like
It doesn't make sense. Like it's not going to make anything better by not talking about stuff. You have to put everything on the table, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because if you want that better connection and a better family dynamic when it comes to just your family and everything, you have to put everything out on the table. And I think that would help. And like when I had that conversation with my sister, it created a better it created a better understanding between us two.
Mhm.
Um, but of
That's
course, the relationship still
true.
is not good. But
Yeah, you have the understanding.
and I was able to have a little more sympathy with her and not necessarily hold on to some of the things that happened.
Mhm.
And so it helped, even though we still don't have a relationship, it didn't work. But I felt like the conversation was definitely needed. So it's
Yeah.
that it's just about conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just like it makes your adopted child feel like a stranger in the house. You know what I mean? Like to this day, like I don't know, like I don't feel very close with my siblings. It
Mhm.
sometimes it makes me sad because I'm like, I wish I had that sister like I could go shopping
Yeah.
with, we could like cook with, or just call each other on the phone and talk hours, talk like
Yeah.
mess or gossip, or just like, and I know even if you're not adopted, like I know that there are some biological siblings who don't get along, where they're just so different, they don't talk with each other. So this is not an unusual case just because you're adopted, but it's just more, I think, common with
Mhm.
adoptive children. Like most people that I know that are adopted, they do not have a relationship with their
Yeah.
biological or with their adoptive like siblings. And that's with different age, whether you have an age gap or not. Like most
Mhm.
people that I know, that's just the case. It's just, it kind of makes me sad a little bit, when I think about it. I'm like, I wish I did have siblings, and it's crazy because when I talk to my birth brother, like,
Mhm.
mind you, I've only met this man once in my life.
Yeah.
And I love talking to him outside of,
Mhm.
there's times where it's like more of a transactional like relationship, but as far as like when we get the transactions out of the way and we're just talking like from sibling to sibling, like it's a fun conversation. And
Mhm.
I don't know, like I don't know how to explain it. It just feels natural. I don't have to force thing or work hard to get approval or get a
Yeah.
certain type of feeling from internal. Like I just feel
Yeah.
like just who I am is enough. You know what I mean? And I feel like in
Mhm.
sibling relationships and adoptive relationship, at least for myself, I feel like it's really hard to feel like I'm enough. So
Yeah, I completely understand that. I completely get it because there's times I was like, oh, I wish I was close to my adopted sister. Because, and the thing is, my brothers, they were close. They got close. They did get close.
yeah,
And I envied that, but because they had part of the reason why they were so close, they had a code with each other that just was just them two and not our family, our parents getting involved. My sister and I didn't do that. And we didn't have trust with each other at all. So I think that
mhm,
also made the relationship not work. And also I think even if that wasn't the case, we don't have a lot of things in common. We're not compatible
right,
enough. So
right, and that's also another thing. Yeah,
to be
exactly.
compatible. And I know it's kind of weird to be like, well, aren't you supposed to like just naturally be compatible to your siblings? But I feel like with maybe
Mhm.
some people, like biological siblings, some of them I feel like do have that where like I'm not compatible with my sibling.
Yeah,
We just
no,
don't
I
work.
think that's a very common thing actually, and that's where you get people who like only visit each other once a year because they don't want to be around each other that much. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
Like
So
they only visit during the holidays, and that's it because they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
this person feels like a complete stranger to me." I feel like
yeah.
that's pretty common in biological, um, but I just
Done.
feel like I guess the main difference is the cause of why these relationships,
Mhm,
aren't necessarily like strong and healthy. There's a difference of the causation, I guess.
mhm.
Um, where, there can be some crossing similarities, but like I think it's like a little bit different reasons why it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've said everything that needed to be said on this subject, and it's important to talk about it, of course.
And if you're a sibling and a biological sibling, you right, and you have a sibling that's adopted,
Mhm.
if you're listening to this and maybe you and your adoptive sibling are not super close with each other, like take it upon yourself maybe to like, extend like an olive branch or like to put a little
Yeah.
bit more effort into relationships because it really is hard feeling like the outsider in the
Mhm.
relationship. You know what I mean? Like feeling like it's you, not versus the rest of the family members, but it's like it's you and you
Mhm.
have to seek approval and feel good enough and be
Yeah.
that good girl and make everyone feel like it was worth it that they adopted you, all this kind of stuff, right? So if
Mhm.
you're able to extend that like hand and be like a comfort for your sibling, like try to do that if you're able to, you know what I mean? And
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty
it
much
is
it.
true, and I hope this reaches, siblings, and I hope this kinda helps foster a better, understanding with each other, and to just be open and talk to each other, and, once again, thank you so much for watching another episode and supporting us.
Guys,
Don't
thank you so
forget
much.
to like, subscribe, share, and let anybody that let people know. Bye.
Everybody know.
Till
Bye.
next time.